everybody, welcome back. I'm so excited to start our first novel here on our channel. We're going to be reading Because of Winn-Dixie by Ch.1. It's a very interesting book. It takes you on a journey of emotions, and you know that I like my books with emotions. Y'all know that. I'm excited to start reading to you guys again. Before we get started, there's a few things that I want to mention. One, I want you to pause the video, go down to the comments, and let us know who you are, because Miss Martinez and I would love to know who's watching these videos. And don't forget to subscribe, that way you can get notified whenever we do post a new video. Also, after every chapter that I read, we're going to take a break, and I'm going to go over some reflective questions like we usually would do in the classroom. During that time, I expect you to have a paper and a pencil. That way you can write the questions down with me and answer them as we go. The last thing that I do want to mention before we go ahead and jump right in is that this book is a quick read. It's about 180 pages. I will be reading one chapter a day. Unless the chapters are short, then I'll go ahead and put two together in one video for you guys, but we still are expected to answer those reflective questions. Now, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it, and I'll see you guys at the end of the video. Because of Winn-Dixie by Ch.1. Chapter 1. My name is India Opal Baloney, and last summer, my daddy, the preacher, sent me to the store for a box of macaroni and cheese, some white rice, and 2 tomatoes, and I came back with a dog. This is what happened. I walked into the produce section of the Winn-Dixie grocery store to pick out my 2 tomatoes, and I almost bumped right into the store manager. He was standing there all red-faced, screaming and waving his arms around. "Who let a dog in here?" he kept on shouting. "Who let a dirty dog in here?" At first, I didn't see a dog. There were just a whole lot of vegetables rolling around on the floor. Tomatoes and onions and green peppers. And there was what seemed like a whole army of Winn-Dixie employees running around waving their arms just the same way the store manager was waving his. And then the dog came running around the corner. He was a big dog, and ugly, and he looked like he was having a real good time. His tongue was hanging out, and he was wagging his tail. He skidded to a stop and smiled right at me. I had never before in my life seen a dog smile, but that is what he did. He pulled back his lips and showed me all his teeth. Then he wagged his tail so hard that he knocked some oranges off a display, and they went rolling everywhere, mixing in with the tomatoes and onions and green peppers. The manager screamed, "Somebody grab that dog!" The dog went running over to the manager, wagging his tail and smiling. He stood up on his hind legs. You could tell that all he wanted to do was get face to face with the manager and thank him for the good time he was having in the produce department. But somehow he ended up knocking the manager over. And the manager must have been having a bad day, because lying there on the floor, right in front of everybody, he started to cry. The dog leaned over him, real concerned, and licked his face. "Please," said the manager, "somebody call the pound." "Wait a minute," I hollered. "That's my dog. Don't call the pound." All the Winn-Dixie employees turned around and looked at me, and I knew I had done something big. And maybe stupid, too. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't let that dog go to the pound. "Here, boy," I said. The dog stopped licking the manager's face and put his ears up in the air and looked at me, like he was trying to remember where he knew me from. "Here, boy," I said again, and then I figured that the dog was probably just like everybody else in the world, that he would want to get called by a name. Only I didn't know what his name was. So I just said the first thing that came into my head. I said, "Here, Winn-Dixie." And that dog came trotting over to me just like he had been doing it his whole life. The manager sat up and gave me a hard stare, like maybe I was making fun of him. "It's his name," I said. "Honest." The manager said, "Don't you know not to bring a dog into a grocery store?" "Yes, sir," I told him. "He got in by mistake. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "Come on, Winn-Dixie," I said to the dog. I started walking, and he followed along behind me as I went out of the produce department and down the cereal aisle and past all the cashiers and out the door. Once we were safe outside, I checked him over real careful, and he didn't look that good. He was big, but skinny. You could see his ribs. And there were bald patches all over him, places where he didn't have any fur at all. Mostly, he looked like a big piece of old brown carpet that had been left out in the rain. "You're a mess," I told him. "I bet you don't belong to anybody." He smiled at me. He did that thing again where he pulled back his lips and showed me his teeth. He smiled so big that it made him sneeze. It was like he was saying, "I know I'm a mess. Isn't it funny?" It's hard not to immediately fall in love with a dog who has a good sense of humor. "Come on," I told him. "Let's see what the preacher has to say about you." And the two of us, me and Winn-Dixie, started walking home. All right, we finished chapter 1. For this next part, you're going to need to pause the video. You're going to need a paper and a pencil if you don't already have one, and then come back and join me. Our first reflective question. Opal's dog is called Winn-Dixie. Tell why Opal decides to give her dog that name. Think about it. Take a moment. Go back and rewind the video if you need to, and then come back and answer that question for us, because this one should be an obvious one. And I think she's pretty clever for naming her dog Winn-Dixie. Makes me want to name my dog Kroger's. And question 2. What word does Opal use to describe Winn-Dixie when she first sees him? Of these qualities, which one causes Opal to adopt Winn-Dixie despite the way he looks? Now, remember we talked about character traits. Our character traits are not something that you can see physically on the outside of the person. So Miss Junco has brown hair. Winn-Dixie had bald patches. But is this a quality that made Opal want to adopt Winn-Dixie? Or is this just something that she saw? Remember, she's talking about a character trait that Winn-Dixie carries. And she says, it's hard almost not to fall immediately in love with a dog who is blank. If you need to go back and rewind the video, you can do that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's reading. I can't wait to read chapter 2 with you guys tomorrow. And I hope to hear from you in the comments down below. I love you guys and I miss you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!